We're going to discuss Caitlin Clark today.
Oh.
They were still talking about it on SportsCenter yesterday at like 5 o'clock. Granted, there's been another Fever game since this game happened.
It's unbelievable.
And they're still talking about just this foul getting upgraded to a flagrant one. And the only reason I wanted to bring it up is because yesterday Pat McAfee called Caitlin Clark a white bitch on ESPN and then had to apologize for it. And Stephen A. Smith also embarrassed himself on First Take, arguing with Monica McNutt. So like two of ESPN's top talent just completely embarrassed themselves talking about women's sports, a league that they're partnered with at ESPN, and nothing's going to happen. Like they're both just going to like, it's fine, going to get away with it and nothing really matters. And I find that like mind-boggling.
Wasn't Stephen A. Smith kind of doing like stats, like we talk more about the WNBA than every other show? Like who cares? But you're not talking about it well.
Well, Stephen A. also then doubled down on his podcast, which he basically said, you only know who Monica McNutt is because of me, because I put her on First Take.
I handpicked the roster. I handpicked the roster, and you...
Wow. He made it a lot worse. McAfee tried to argue that he said it complimentary in a strange defense for himself. He tried to say well, I meant it as a compliment, and then like issued an apology, and then later on WWE Raw called a wrestler a white bitch.
Jess,
son of a bitch.
Son of a bitch. Yeah, sorry.
Jess, it's funny because we've been discussing men's sports for 50 years now on the radio. 50 years, and we're still terrible at it. And so now we're discussing women's sports. And you expect I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying it's going to take a minute. We're not doing it well. And I'm confused. Have men never watched women's sports before? Because Caitlin Clark came in with all this fanfare, deserved, by the way. But LeBron went through this. Michael Jordan went through it. Caleb Williams is about to go through it. People are going to take their shots. They're going to say, hey, we're pretty good over here as well. It's not just about Caitlin Clark. And she's going through some of those rookie lumps that all the great players go through. Women are competitive. Is that surprising to men?
I guess so. I mean, I'm with you, Stugotz. Like, I played sports growing up, and it was super physical. There would be fights sometimes. There would be, like, really intense competition, and that's part of any sport, and not just the WNBA, any sport. I'm sure when you coached your daughter's lacrosse team and are watching her play at Northwestern, lacrosse is one of the most physical sports there is. There's hard fouls all the time. It's just like very weird how this has become a conversation about like having to protect Caitlin Clark, who also dishes it out too. That's part of her game. That's a reason why people like her, is because she's so tough. She's a tough player in college, and she dish it out. And I'm not saying that Kennedy Carter should have done this. Obviously, I said yesterday it should have been called a flagrant on the spot, and I don't think this entire backlash happens if the refs just don't miss that call. But it's so weird how like mainstream sports has been covering this for like 3 days. And also when it goes to Stephen A. Smith, all he had to do was say like, you're right, like we'll do better. And I think that whole conversation like doesn't happen. Like it doesn't require a lot for men who have been covering sports for a long time that are now catching up to the popularity of women's sports just to say like, you're right, like we're learning too. Like
that's what we need to do.
Figure it out.
I feel like it's like our show Throwing Stones. Like we've been showing our ass on this stuff as much as anyone. So
we're talking about it. We're not talking about it well. That's essentially what's going on. Yeah. And some people will say, well, at least they're talking about it. No, talk about it well. Do a better job. Talk about it in a way that kind of makes sense. And for people to not know, first off, I guarantee you, Caitlin Clark, Greg, I guarantee you, she wants the bumpy road. She wants people to come after her. She's a competitor. It's a sign of respect that so many people are going after her in the WNBA. That's what she wants. That's what she expects.
She did say over the weekend, I feel like I'm getting hammered.
Okay, but still, she's a competitor, and she knew she was going to go through some of this, and I'm certain she wants it to be done. Right.
PK3?
I'm certain she wants it to be done within the confines of the rules of the sport, but she doesn't want it to be easy.
I think it's great for the league, for the sport, that she isn't finding it easy. I think it's great that this wonderkind from college can't just waltz into the WNBA and pick up right where she left off at Iowa, because it speaks to the level of the NBA, the quality level. But I think everybody right now, the media and other women in the WNBA, are coming to grips with what nobody wants to admit, which is that Caitlin Clark, her alone, is a huge reason why a lot of people, including me, quite frankly, are paying more attention to the WNBA now than ever before. I don't think that's a bad thing, but it's making a lot of other players jealous, and they should be jealous.
That's where I'll stop you. I think a lot of WNBA players have said that exact thing, that she's bringing more eyeballs and that they're happy that they're finally getting coverage. Where I'd stop is that they're all jealous of her. Not that it's wrong to be jealous of someone who is making a ton of money.
$28 million.
I don't think it's jealousy. It's like, hey, look over here. We're pretty good too, and we laid down the foundation for this.
I
I
agree with
agree.
that.
I think it's more so there's probably some jealousy mixed into it. I'm not going to claim that I know what everyone is thinking, obviously, but I think it's jealousy as well as competition and wanting to prove like, hey, we're here too. We also deserve the amount of coverage that you've been getting in college. And I think like it's impossible to even have this conversation comparing the players that have set the foundation of the WNBA without acknowledging the fact that those players played in the NCAA tournament without their games being televised. Those players went to college without being able to make NIL deals. Those players have been in a league where ESPN hasn't televised a lot of their games, even though they've been partners, and they haven't talked about it on First Take. And that was, I think, Monica McNutt's point, is that like this is all happening and it's a great
So
thing.
offended, Stephen A.
And it's, yeah, right. Like
We've been talking. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Well, he
It's
found
just-
her. I mean,
can't
he
you just
found her.
say like, okay, we're new to this too? Like he had to like get all defensive about.
Given the
just
stats.
like, all right, yeah, like you're right.
We're the
Stephen A.,
metrics.
do me a favor.
You're
Talk
right. I'm
women's.
Where are the metrics?
Do
That's
me
what
a
Stephen
favor.
A. was-
Don't talk about women's sports when it's convenient. Talk about women's sports because you want to talk about women's sports.
Because it's a good product.
Like
The games are. There's going to be more Sky Liberty tonight. It's going to be a great game. Hopefully the Sky
Northwestern
win
was
it
just
again.
going for back-to-back NCAA lacrosse championships, and Izzy Skane has had every bit the career as Caitlin Clark had at basketball. I didn't hear a single person in the media, including you, Stephen A. Smith, mention her name or mention that team. You are only talking about it when it's convenient for you and your ratings.
This isn't the first time that Pat McAfee's gotten in some trouble, we should say.
It's also not the first time he's mocked the trouble on WWE
True.
Raw later that night.
Do we think the call came that someone ordered the code red, like, hey, you have to apologize on Twitter? Or how do we think this went down?
I mean, he was like the number one thing trending. So like I imagine in his mind, maybe he was just like, I gotta say something, but I would not be surprised if someone was like, yo, because it didn't seem very sincere. So it almost felt like a forced.
It seems like you're apologizing because you have to apologize. So I would think that somebody there got in his ear. I would have a hard time believing that Pat McAfee said to himself, you know what, that was wrong. I need to apologize.
The most important thing I think about all of this, like we just did, 10 minutes on the WNBA and Stephen A., a couple minutes on McAfee.
Fine.
Dan's in LA right now, and he's not talking about any of this.
Oh, must be killing
How
him.
much is this eating away at him?
Did he like text you like, please let me come on and talk about it?
He did not. No, you have him texting me when he's away
Just
in
like,
California.
please.
He doesn't text me when he's here.
Oh, this story was made for me.
You don't get the 4 a.m. texts?
No. I used to get him all the time. I don't get him anymore. I'm thankful. I mean, you're still getting them. You're getting them now.
I honestly, has been a few months. I don't think I've got. Billy gets them all the
Yeah,
time.
I get
though.
him.
The thing about his apology that came out, forced or not, I mean, it seems as though someone would have said something, right? Because even in the apology, when you see it, he says, I meant it as complimentary, which seems...
How?
Well, no, I mean, if you listen to what he was saying, because he was saying she's the
He
one
was
drawing all the
he
attention.
was
I'm
trying
not
to-
defending him, but I'm saying he was trying to speak positively of her, but he just said
It
in
just
a
seems to
terrible
be
way.
kind of
Calling her a
like...
bitch.
No, I mean, because he was
I
saying
know, I
she's the one
listened-
drawing all the attention.
I
Not,
listened to the whole clip,
Yeah.
and he had a screen of other white WNBA players on screen and was saying, see, look at all of these other white women that have been in the WNBA that are stars that we've ignored. We don't just like Caitlin because she's white. That was the whole crux of his argument, which isn't like that on its own is worth debating. I think it's crazy.
Yeah.
But in doing that, then he went and said,
Yeah.
it's
It's just
'cause
how he
one white
talks.
bitch.
Like,
Right.
And he thought that it was normal to say it on air, and then obviously it's not.
He thought that was a compliment, is what you're saying.
Yeah, well, he said
In
as
his
much
world,
in
he
his
thought he was
apology.
complimenting Caitlin Clark, and then he apologized.
That's what the
What
apology
a crazy
says.
world he lives in,
Yeah.
where he thinks that's a compliment.
That's a weird world.
I mean,
he
it's-
almost said it in the context of like she's a badass. In his way
No,
of
I
saying
understand it.
badass is,
I get it. Yes.
No, it's just
That's
just,
not the way to
that's
say
the
it.
way he says it. And
Yes. He says it's 100% on me. Well, who else would it be on? Like, I hate that in apology. Hey, that's on me. No, Sherlock.
I have never
Love you,
missed
Pat.
NFL minicamp coverage more. I'm not gonna lie. It's
Mandatory minicamp. Oh,
Yeah.
even better. They got to be there.
Can I ask you a serious question?
Sure.
As someone who
Yes,
is
I'm healthy. That's it.
As someone who's a fan of the WNBA, do you wish that like the new fans would just go away?
No, honestly, I don't, and I don't mind that anyone that hasn't.
It just
watched
seems like an exhausting experience
Well,
at this point.
I think there's new fans that like genuinely want to engage in like watch the games and talk about it and stuff. Like I don't even think that Pat McAfee and Stephen A don't fit into that category. Like I do think people do want to talk about it more and watch the games and just like be fans. But there are a lot of disingenuous arguments being made that come from a place of not knowing the history, not knowing the context. And I'll admit, I don't know the entire history of the WNBA. I've been a fan for most of my adult life, but I didn't grow up watching it. The games weren't on TV very much when I was young. I went to games when the Sky played in Rosemont, but I think that's okay. Like you don't have to know everything about it, but then at least like come from that place of like, I want to learn more. I want to listen. I listen to the experts. The other thing that blows my mind is like, I hosted a show with Kate for like 3 years where we talked about women's sports. And like when we started doing that show, like the amount of imposter syndrome I felt, like I would say like a pretty good base knowledge of like all general women's sports, like soccer, basketball, everything, college basketball, especially because that's what I did a lot in college with. But like, Kate's an expert. Like she's a best-selling author. She played college basketball. She's super smart. She's a super accomplished journalist. Like talking with her about it, I'd be like, oh my God, I really got to know I gotta learn.
Study up.
But there's people that just like go to work and they're like, I don't need to do any of that. Right. I'm just gonna come to my job and act like I know everything. And like that to me, like.
But Jess, what I'm saying is
imagine.
We're still doing that with men's sports.
I agree.
This character was built on that.
But it's a strange
like
defense.
Caitlin Clark needs to win a championship. That's this bread and butter right here.
We talked about this during the NCAA tournament. Like, I think that's fine. Like, I think GOAT talk or championship rings, put your rings in a box, whatever. Like,
Best
that's
college
all
player
fine.
ever?
But yesterday I'm scrolling Twitter and I see the Chicago Tribune editorial board put out an article with no byline saying that Kennedy Carter's foul on Caitlin Clark could be considered assault.
That's a great.
That is where I'm like,
It was Schefter.
whoa.
Yeah, we're just arresting black women on.
Exactly, Roy. Like, there's a racial undertone that I think needs to be acknowledged, and also
that's ridiculous.
the obvious like gender bias that comes into play when we're covering female athletes and women has been so obvious when we're talking about especially this foul, which is a hip check on a player, a popular player. It's been done before. It happened to Angel Reese in a game last week
Flagrant one was
against
called.
Jonquil Jones.
Well, in hindsight.
Angel Reese that was
Jess,
a different
I'm telling
play.
you-
That was Alyssa Thompson.
Jess, I'm
Or
telling
Thomas.
you,
Flagrant?
men thought that women handle sports differently. They're assassins. They want to win. They're competitive. Like, what did men think? Like, I'm glad that we're finally here and we're discussing women's sports, but what we're discussing is ludicrous. We're not discussing women's sports. We're discussing how to discuss women's sports. That's absurd. It is. Go watch women's sports, not just Caitlin Clark. If you want to watch it and see how women treat sports, hey, I got news for you. They treat it just like the men do. They care. They want to win. They get a bit jealous when someone's getting all the hype. Someone has all the camera time. So what do? Hard foul. You've never seen that before? You have. You've been watching it your entire life. This is no different.
Let's just call a spade what it is. This is a perfect opportunity for the weaponized type of people to get weaponized and get behind something of this racial magnitude. Because like you just said, Angel Reese just suffered the same thing. Jonquil Jones pushed her, and then she pushed her again harder. But she got after the game like, oh, thank you, excuse me, pardon me. AT did the same thing with her. The victim angle that Caitlin took weaponized everybody. That wasn't a basketball play. And that's the part where the same bots that activate after Trump, they activate on these type of things, and that's what's happened. Everybody, like Chris said, bro, Stephen A. of the world, just say you ain't been doing a good enough job. Don't nobody care, but be real.
He's
That's
keeping
what we
stats.
want.
No, he's talked about it more than anyone.
Right, we just want it real.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it's just like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. I'll do better. And everyone's like, yes. he just said he'll do better. Like, that's so
And she
brave.
wasn't even criticizing Stephen A. She was giving him his flower. Like, yes, you've had us here, but you could have been doing it 3 years ago. And he's just like, I'm gonna go film a whole podcast about this.
Right. That's where you could say the quote unquote men of the world. That's embarrassing for us. Like when you say we don't want to say we don't know the way if you ask us directions. That stereotype. Same situation,
Yeah.
Stephen A. Bro, you could have been doing this last year, bro. I ain't hear you say nothing about Ryan Howard.
Right.
I ain't hear you say nothing about these ladies, Nelson Adoda from the Connecticut. But you don't even know these folks for real. So just at least keep it real. Like, oh, that's my fault. Don't double down and get on your podcast later on and say, do you know Monica McNutt? It's because of me. Like, yeah.
Andrea Carter, have you heard of her?
That's
That's
cringe.
wild,
It's a big
man.
cringe.
I mean,
It's
it's
super
ridiculous.
Men, that is
it's
a thing-
perfectly Stephen A., but you just can't do
perfectly
that.
Stephen
No,
A.
but that is a thing that women hear and acknowledge and take note of, because I hear men say that all the time. Like, oh, well, I hired this person. I invented them. I created them. Like, taking credit for a person's success. Every woman has heard a man in their career say that at some point, and they take note of that. He's not the first person to do that. That is a terrible look.
Yeah.
Barkley saying stuff like they should make it easy on her and, kiss her hand because she's brought all this exposure and they have chartered flights because of her. No, what the other women are saying is, no, we laid the foundation. We're pretty good too. We're the reason she has this platform to do what it is that she's doing. That's all they're objecting to. It's
And
absurd.
she talk. She out there talking big crowd. She out there, she doing the same thing. So shoot, these folks want to see you back it up because I'm a brick wall, sis. Huh.